The twin suns of NetNarrator glowed over the glass towers of the alien capital. Their orange light spilled across white crystal bridges that linked the royal palace to the floating gardens below. The air shimmered with energy from the defense domes. It was a world of beauty and arrogance, ruled by the proud Zanari Empire, a race known for grace, intelligence, and pride above all. Inside the royal palace, music played from silver instruments, while alien nobles in long robes gathered for the Grand Council reception. The young princess, Liara, stood at the center, tall and elegant, her violet eyes shining with confidence. She wore a dress made of living silk that shimmered like starlight. Around her, attendants whispered praises and bowed deeply, but Lyra's attention was fixed on one figure at the far end of the hall, a human soldier in full armor. He stood motionless like a statue, covered in heavy metal plating that looked old and battle-scarred. His helmet visor hid his face, reflecting the light of the hall. Strange alien runes glowed faintly on his chest plate, marks of past battles across distant worlds. Liara tilted her head. "That is the human they sent?" she asked, her voice echoing through the hall. Her tone carried both curiosity and mockery. "Our mighty allies from Earth send this machine to guard me?" Her attendants chuckled quietly. "Perhaps the humans have run out of real soldiers," one whispered. Liara smiled faintly. "Or perhaps this one is too scared to speak." The armored figure said nothing. He simply stood, hands behind his back, the reflection of her amused face shining in his visor. Liara stepped closer. Her perfume of blue flowers drifted through the air. "Tell me, human," she said softly, her voice playful, "can you even understand me? Or do you still use smoke to talk on your world?" Still, there was silence. Her pride swelled. She loved testing the limits of those around her. "Do you hide your face because you fear your betters will see it?" she asked, tapping his chest plate lightly with one slender finger. "Or because it's too plain for the royal court?" Nothing. The only sound was the soft hum of his armor's energy core. Liara sighed and turned away with a small laugh. Typical human. All metal, no soul. From across the hall, a voice spoke, deep, calm, and commanding. "Enough, Liara," the Emperor. Her father stood at the grand stairs, his robe glowing with gold threads. "That man has crossed 3 war zones to be here. You owe him respect." Liara bowed slightly, but rolled her eyes as she turned away. "Father, with respect, he looks more like a relic than a warrior. The Mythier swarm won't be frightened by his silence." The Emperor frowned. "You mock what you don't understand." That night, Liara stood on her balcony, looking out over the shining city. Distant lights flickered where the border defenses glowed. The Mythier swarm, an endless race of insect-like invaders, had already consumed 2 colonies. The Zanari feared they would be next. Humans had come to help, sending supplies, engineers, and a small group of elite soldiers. This human, Sergeant Kane, was one of them, assigned personally to protect the princess. She sighed. "A waste," she muttered. "I don't need a human bodyguard." But fate had other plans. The next morning, Liara rode through the outer gardens toward the Academy Tower. Her escort included 2 royal guards and Kane, who followed silently on foot. The gardens were peaceful, filled with flying crystal birds and streams that glowed softly. Liara enjoyed teasing her guards, laughing and tossing petals into the air. Then, suddenly, a strange vibration echoed beneath the bridge. Kane's head snapped up. His armor sensors flashed red. "Back," he ordered, his voice sharp for the first time. Before Liara could respond, the bridge exploded beneath them. Energy fire erupted from the tree's ambush. Unknown creatures in dark armor appeared, shooting plasma bolts. Liara screamed as one of her guards fell. Kane moved faster than her eyes could follow. His gauntlet shield expanded, forming a glowing wall of light. Plasma bolts ricocheted off as he dragged Liara behind cover. "Stay down, princess," he commanded. She stared at him, shocked by his strength and precision. The human she mocked was suddenly the only reason she was alive. He fired his wrist blaster, short bursts hitting the attackers with perfect aim. When the last enemy fell, silence returned to the garden, broken only by Lyra's trembling breath. Kane turned to her. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "No. No, He gave a short nod, checked his weapon, and spoke into his cum device. "Area secured. Princess safe." The cold efficiency in his voice surprised her. He didn't sound proud or angry, only focused. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. The sound of the explosion still echoed in her head. She remembered the way his body had shielded hers from the blast. She remembered the heat from his armor, the smell of smoke, the flash of his eyes through the cracked visor, eyes filled with fire, not fear. Maybe she had misjudged him. Days passed. Kane continued his duties, silent but alert. Following her everywhere, palace meetings, training sessions, even royal dinners. His armor shone under the palace lights, a silent reminder of that day. The courtiers whispered about him, the mysterious human who never removed his helmet, who ignored insult and praise alike. One evening, Lyra found him repairing a broken defense drone in the hangar. She leaned against the wall. "So, you can fix things too," she said. "You humans seem good at survival tricks." Kane didn't look up. "We have to be," he said simply. She frowned. "Is that all you can say?" He stopped, looked at her for a moment through the visor, then returned to work. "Words don't stop wars, princess." His voice carried a quiet pain. It silenced her more than any insult could. Later, Lyra asked her father why the humans fought in every corner of the galaxy. The Emperor replied, "Because they remember what it means to lose everything. They fight harder because they must." That answer stayed in her heart longer than she expected, but the turning point came during the festival night. The palace was filled with guests, light, and music. Fireworks glowed across the sky. Lyra walked through the corridor alone, enjoying the silence after the noise. Kane followed a few steps behind, as always. Suddenly, the floor beneath them trembled. Then, an explosion. The walls shattered. A blinding wave of heat rushed through the corridor. Lyra stumbled backward, screaming. The blast came from the royal courtyard. Another attack. Before she could move, Kane lunged forward and grabbed her. His armored body covered hers as the ceiling collapsed. The world became fire and dust. For a few seconds, all sound vanished. Only the heavy weight of his armor pressed over her, and his voice, muffled but steady, spoke in her ear. "Stay down." "Princess." She could feel his heartbeat through the armor. Strong. Human. When the dust cleared, Lyra opened her eyes to see him still shielding her. The armor's surface glowed red from heat. Smoke curled from his shoulders. She reached up, touching his side gently. You're hurt." He ignored the pain. "Are you safe?" Lyra nodded. "Yes." Then he rose, drawing his blaster. "Stay behind me." She watched, half in awe, as he charged through the smoke toward the attackers who were breaching the courtyard. Dozens of them, masked, heavily armed. Kane fired with impossible precision, moving like a force of nature. Plasma bolts hit his armor, but he kept advancing. He fought not like a soldier under command, but like someone defending something precious. When it was over, the courtyard was a ruin. The attackers lay defeated. Flames reflected off Kane's battered armor as he dropped to one knee. Lyra ran to him. "Stop," he waved her back weakly. "Stand clear." Armor breach. The medical drones arrived, buzzing around him. One of the alien medics shouted, "The seal is broken. He can't breathe in our air without filtration." Kane coughed, his breath labored. Slowly, he lifted his hand to his helmet. The locking mechanisms hissed and released. Lyra stepped closer, unable to stop herself. The helmet came free with a soft metallic click. For the first time, she saw his face. He was young, maybe 25, with light brown skin and short dark hair damp with sweat. A long scar crossed his cheek and his eyes. His eyes were human. Not glowing like the Zenaries, not cold or perfect, but alive. They held something deeper than power. Pain, endurance, hope. Lyra froze, staring. The air around her seemed to vanish. All the words she wanted to say disappeared. the soldier she mocked. The man she called machine was not made of steel. He was made of something far stronger, humanity. He looked up at her, weakly smiling through exhaustion. "Princess, are you unharmed?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, because of you." The medics carried him away, but Liara couldn't move. She kept seeing his eyes, those eyes that had seen war, loss, and yet still carried kindness. Later, as the night passed, she stood again on her balcony. Below, repair crews worked to rebuild the damaged courtyard. The stars of SciFi-Prime burned above her. She touched her own reflection in the glass. Her world had always taught her that humans were fragile. Primitive beings, useful allies, but nothing more. Yet today, one of them had saved her life twice. He had faced fire, pain, and death without hesitation. Liara whispered softly, "Who are you, Kane?" In the silence that followed, only the stars answered. From that moment, something in her heart began to change. She no longer saw him as a metal soldier or a lesser being. She saw him as something far more dangerous to her pride, someone real, someone human, and though she didn't know it yet, her greatest lesson was only beginning. The morning after the attack was quiet. The royal palace of SciFi-Prime still smelled of burned stone and melted crystal. Drones buzzed through the corridors, repairing walls and ceiling cracks. The once perfect halls of the Zanari Empire were scarred. And so was its princess. Liara stood beside a window overlooking the sunrise. Her reflection in the glass looked different. She no longer saw the proud, untouchable princess who used to laugh at others. She saw a girl who had almost lost everything, saved by someone she once called lesser. Her father, Emperor Vashar, entered silently. His long robe brushed the floor as he approached her. "You didn't sleep," he said softly. Liara nodded. "No, I keep seeing him, father. The human." Kane the Emperor studied her. "He is recovering. The healers say his body is stronger than they expected. Humans are difficult to understand." She turned, her eyes full of confusion. "Why did he protect me like that? He could have died." Her father sighed. "Because he is human. They carry a strange heart, full of guilt and hope. They fight even when they know they might lose." Liara looked down, thinking of the moment he took off his helmet, the eyes that held both pain and peace. "I mocked him," she whispered, "and he saved me anyway." 2 days later, she went to see him. The recovery room was small and quiet, filled with the soft hum of machines. Kane sat on a metal bed, his armor beside him on a stand. His chest was wrapped in white healing bands, but his posture remained straight. When Liara entered, he looked up in surprise. "Princess." She smiled awkwardly. "You're awake." He nodded. "Mostly." Liara walked closer. "You should rest. The healers said your body still needs recovery." Kane smirked faintly. "Humans heal faster when they have work to do." She tilted her head. "You humans always speak like soldiers. Duty, honor, sacrifice. Don't you ever get tired of it?" Kane's eyes softened. "We get tired. We just keep going anyway." She sat down beside his bed, curious. "Tell me something. Why do you fight for us?" "We're not your people." Kane looked out the window. "Because the swarm doesn't care who's human or Zanari. When they come, they destroy everything. If your world falls, ours will be next. We fight so someone else doesn't have to lose their home." Liara blinked slowly. His words were simple, yet they cut through her like a blade. For the first time she felt shame, not because he had made her feel small, because she had never thought that deeply before. He turned to her, smiling weakly. "Besides, your people gave us a place when we needed one. Maybe it's time we return the favor." Liara looked down at her hands. "Maybe I never deserved your protection," she said quietly. Kane shook his head. "Deserve has nothing to do with it." Their eyes met. For a brief moment, two worlds, human and alien, understood each other without words. Days turned into weeks. The palace grew quiet again, though the threat of the Meteor swarm still lingered. Liara often found herself walking to the training grounds where Kane had resumed his duties. His armor was repaired, shining silver again. though some battle scars were left untouched, reminders of what he had survived. She would stand at the edge, watching him train soldiers from different worlds. Humans, Zanari, and even reptilian warriors moved together under his direction. He taught them patiently, correcting their mistakes with calm precision. "Hold your stance," he would say. "Don't fight the recoil, control it." Liara admired the way he led them. He didn't shout, didn't act superior, yet everyone obeyed him. His leadership came not from fear, but from trust. One day she approached him after training. "You're not like other soldiers," she said. He smiled slightly. "I hope that's a good thing." "Shh," she replied. "You fight without pride. My people fight for glory. You fight for something else." Kane shrugged. "We fight to make sure someone can live to see another sunrise." That night, Liara wrote in her private journal something she hadn't done in years. "The human fights with heart, not just weapons. I mocked him, but now I envy his strength. His courage comes not from power, but from kindness." A few days later, the alarm sirens screamed through the capital. Liara rushed to the command hall, her heart racing. The giant holographic map showed red lights blinking across the border. The Mathir swarm was moving faster than expected. Thousands of ships were approaching the capital. Emperor Vashar stood beside his generals. "All citizens to shelters. Arm the planetary shields." Liara turned and saw Kane entering the hall, his armor gleaming, helmet under his arm. "You shouldn't be here," he said quickly. "They're coming straight for the palace." Liara stood firm. "I won't hide." Kane frowned. "This isn't bravery, princess. It's suicide." She met his gaze. "Then you'll have to protect me again." He sighed, shaking his head, but there was no time to argue. Explosions thundered in the distance. The entire city shook as the swarm ships began their bombardment. Kane put on his helmet and turned to the troops. "Positions. Get civilians underground. Hold the east corridor. That's where they'll breach." The sky turned black with enemy ships. Their energy bolts rained down like fire. The city's defense shields glowed bright, cracking under the pressure. In the chaos, Liara found herself fighting beside Kane at the palace gates. She picked up a fallen guard's plasma, a rifle, and fired into the swarm of advancing creatures, insect-like monsters with chitin armor and burning red eyes. Kane fought at her side, his blaster cutting through enemy lines. His armor flashed with impacts, but he never slowed. "Stay behind me," he shouted. "I'm not leaving." She yelled back. The creature shrieked and charged. Kane's rifle overheated, so he drew his energy blade, cutting down anything that got close. Liara's pulse raced. She had never seen anyone fight like this, not even the best Zanari generals. He moved with precision, strength, and something more, heart. Then a massive explosion threw them both to the ground. The swarm's heavy walker had breached the gates. A creature 3 stories tall, covered in armor plating, advanced through the smoke. Kane pushed himself up. "Get back." "No." Liara screamed, lifting her weapon. "You can't face that alone." But he was already running forward. She watched as the walker aimed its cannon directly at him. He dove aside, sliding under the creature's legs, then fired his last grenade. The explosion tore through its belly. The monster collapsed in flames. Kane staggered, his armor cracked, smoke rising from his back. Liara ran to him, helping him stand. "You're bleeding," she cried. He gave a weak smile. "Still breathing. That's enough." Before they could move, another wave of enemies approached. Hundreds of them. Kane raised his weapon, even though the charge light flickered red. "We hold here," he said firmly. Liara looked at him in disbelief. "There's too many." He looked at her through the cracked visor. "There always are." The line of swarm soldiers advanced like a black tide. Kane stood tall, armor scorched, weapon raised. Liara stood beside him, trembling but determined. And then something changed. The palace soldiers, seeing the human and the princess standing side by side, found new strength. They rallied, shouting and firing with renewed courage. Kane's bravery had spread like fire. The battle raged until dawn. When the sun rose, the swarm ships began to retreat. The defense fleet had arrived from orbit, driving them back into the void. The city was saved, but at a terrible cost. Liara looked around the battlefield. Smoke, rubble, and silence. Then she saw Kane collapse to his knees. She ran to him. "No, Kane." He smiled faintly beneath his cracked helmet. "Looks like we did it." She knelt beside him, holding his face gently as she lifted the helmet off again. His skin was pale, his breath shallow. "Don't you dare close your eyes," she whispered. "You can't leave me now." He looked at her eyes full of light. "I told you once," he said softly. "Words don't stop wars, but they can change hearts." Tears filled her eyes. "You changed mine," he chuckled weakly. "Then my mission's done." He passed out before she could answer. Hours later, the medics carried him to the infirmary. The war was finally over. The swarm was broken, and the name Sergeant Kane spread across the Empire, the human who stood when no one else could. Days passed. Kane slowly recovered again. When he awoke, he found himself in the same room as before, but this time, the visitor waiting for him was not just the princess. The Emperor himself stood there, along with generals and diplomats. Bashar bowed his head slightly. "Human, you have done what even our greatest armies could not. You saved not only my daughter, but our entire world." Kane tried to stand, but the Emperor gestured for him to rest. "No more battles today, soldier." Liara stepped forward. She was no longer the mocking princess he had first met. Her eyes were soft, her voice gentle. "You came here as a protector, Kane, but you've become something more. You've become our friend, our legend." Kane smiled, humbled. "I just did what anyone would have done." She shook her head. "No, only a human would have done what you did." The Emperor ordered that Kane be given the Crystal Honor of Xenar, the highest award of bravery in the Empire. But Kane refused to keep it. "Give it to your soldiers," he said. "They fought too." Liara placed the medal back in his hands. "Then take it for them." Weeks later, when the human fleet prepared to leave Xenar Prime, Liara stood on the balcony once more, watching the ships lift into the sky. Kane stood beside her, fully healed, his armor shining under the twin suns. "You could stay," she said quietly. He looked at her, smiling. "And miss the next adventure. Earth still needs me."